let's get into the Knicks saga, because it's not a saga to me. A lot of people thought I was a clown bringing up the whole Donovan Mitchell thing, that he was coming home. He was going out to dinner with Obi Toppin and Emmanuel Quigley. And I remember listening to Snug and all the different people attacking me, saying that I didn't know what I was talking about, that it was a clown act to think that Donovan Mitchell was going out with them and that he was going to be a New York Knick. What's interesting about this is that a week after I thought Donovan Mitchell was all done with going to New York, as Danny Ainge came out and said numerous amount of times that they're building around Donovan, over the last couple of days, 72 hours, Danny Ainge is taking offers. He said he called out to the NBA and all the teams throughout the NBA saying that he's willing to take offers for Donovan. Now, obviously, Donovan is probably, ladies and gentlemen, not telling Utah that he doesn't want to be a part of the rebuilding stage. And being that Donovan Mitchell wants to win a championship sometime in the next couple of years, he decided that he wants to be dealt it. So obviously the three teams that he was most interested in was the Knicks, Miami, and I think it was, I forget the other team. Was it Phoenix?
I think it was Phoenix originally, but I think they are now trying to focus more on the Durant sweepstakes.
Right. So Donovan's out of that stake, and Miami seems like they can't add him because of their salary cap issues. They're trying to sign Tyler Hero. That doesn't look like it's going to happen. So the only team right now that stands out the most that could have a little bit of wiggle room, obviously with Julius Randle and some of the young players that they have and the amount of picks that they have for the next couple of years, is the New York Knicks. Now, Donovan Mitchell grew up a New York Knicks fan. His father played for the Mets. His father works for the Mets. So it makes a lot of sense on why he wants to come to New York. The question on what we've seen so far with the New York Knicks this offseason is, do they know where they're going when it comes to this team and where they believe they're going to be in the next couple of years? Now, obviously, adding Jalen Brunson, he's a fantastic, powerful, top-end point guard. Well, we think that he could be. We don't know. We saw what he did in Dallas. We saw what he did last year for his first big year. In the playoffs, he was fantastic. Throughout this season, he averaged 16 points and I think 5 or 6 assists a game, 5.6 or something like that. Could he be an elite point guard in this league? I think that going to the Eastern Conference would make him a better player. I think it would. Now, obviously, the Eastern Conference doesn't have as much depth as the Western Conference does. And I think there's still, even though that the Eastern Conference is more top-heavy, I think the Western Conference is still better, when it comes to even the bottom seed teams. Yeah. So Jalen Brunson coming to the Knicks, taking a little bit less money than going back to Dallas, and adding Donovan Mitchell to a roster of possibly R.J. Barrett, Brunson, and Donovan Mitchell makes a lot of sense. And does that win him a championship? No. It's not going to win him a championship. They need one more piece. I think a veteran player that has won before that can help this team, give them a little bit more, and they need a little bit more depth on their bench. They do, which they could do at the trade deadline, maybe in a trade here and there. A veteran's minimal. We'll see what the Knicks do if they do land a Donovan Mitchell, but they need that superstar. They need that guy that they can build around. Now, RJ is becoming that, but he's not that yet. They need a guy that you can, count on with the last 3 minutes of a game, and you need a guy that could score that extra basket that can take them over the top. You look at this team, and you look at the New York Knicks as a whole, this organization has been an absolute laughingstock. They have been laughed at over the years. You talk about the Brooklyn Nets when they added KD and they added Kyrie and James Harden. Everybody was making fun of the New York Knicks, that the Knicks couldn't land KD. The Knicks couldn't land Kyrie Irving. When Jimmy Butler became available, nobody thought that the Knicks had a chance for Jimmy Butler. Meanwhile, everybody thought that the Brooklyn Nets were the little brother of the New York Knicks, and they had no chance either.
And they still are.
And then with all the stuff that's happened in the offseason this year with Kyrie and KD, they don't want to be there. James Harden wanted out at the trade deadline. He gets traded to the 76ers. We're not even talking about Brooklyn anymore. The Knicks are slowly but surely trying to get themselves back a little bit on top of the Brooklyn Nets. Now, if they add Donovan Mitchell and KD goes elsewhere and Kyrie goes somewhere else, could the Knicks be back on top in New York? They were never under the Brooklyn Nets. They just didn't have the talent the Brooklyn Nets have or had. You look at this team right now, are they a playoff team? Is the Knicks with Jalen Brunson, RJ Barrett, and Julius Randle, with some of the young players that they have, the Obi Toppins, the Quigleys, the Grimes, are they a playoff team? The answer is no.
Yeah, I would say play-in team for them.
I don't even think they're playing.
Assuming that they don't get the, I guess, worst version of Julius Randle imaginable, like you saw last season, and now with some of the veterans traded, hopefully Thibodeau learns, maybe we should play some of the young guys. So I think they should improve, because I don't think talent-wise they're a bottom 5 team in the Eastern Conference like they showed last year, because they do have some depth, they do have some young talent on the roster. But yeah, they were definitely a fluke of where they were from where they were as a 4 seed when they made the playoffs. So that's going to be the question to the judge. Donovan Mitchell, I think, leapfrogs them into that. I would say probably the 4 through 6 range if they do end up trading for him, just because it probably will take a little bit of while to get going in that new scheme. Jalen Brunson, too, first time in that system as well. So all at once, it might be a little bit of a slow start, but I still think they'll be better than a play-in team if they do end up trading for Donovan Mitchell. What's interesting is that Quentin Grimes and Mitchell Robinson were the main centers of the trade packages, though, which I actually thought was going to be a lot more the way Danny Ainge was.
Well, it's still going to be. They're going to have to bring in a third team because Julius Randle's contract needs to go too.
Right.
So if Utah doesn't want Julius Randle's contract, they're going to have to move it to another team. Mm-hmm. So they're going to have to bring in another team that's going to probably either add picks or players to add to Utah, or maybe have to go to the Knicks to wiggle out the contracts that have to make sense for both teams or all 3 teams.
Right. Now, what I heard so far is 3 first-round picks seems like the basis of what the Knicks are trying to trade, either their own pick in 2023 or the Dallas pick that they still have remaining, and then they'll alternate the other years. The Knicks have 2024 through 2028 available to trade to them, and from what I heard, the Knicks have up to 8 total first-round picks to use in any of those types of deals. Obviously, they're not going to trade all 8, but 3 seems like the basis of what they're doing at right now, probably starting with their own 2023 pick and moving on. But yes, a third team I think will have to take on the Julius Randle contract, because it doesn't seem like, from what we've heard,
Utah's doesn't
interested.
Want it. No, they don't want it.
No, they're going to stick to a rebuild, and they're going to build up depth, a lot more young depth like they already did from the Minnesota trade with Gobert. So that's the path they're on right now. They're going to have to get a third team involved for Randle, and that might be tricky considering, one, how badly he played last year with young players, and 2, just how inefficient he was in a league where you have to shoot efficiently.
What's interesting about this, and listen, I don't know where Donovan Mitchell is going. It doesn't mean that he's going to the Knicks. I know everybody on these posts are making fun that Donovan Mitchell was spotted in New York City having lunch. I know you guys want to make jokes, and that's fine. Crack jokes, that's fine. But you were cracking jokes last week, even though I took back thinking that Donovan Mitchell was going to be a Knick. And now all of a sudden it's coming out that that the Knicks are the lead team to get him. All of a sudden, after 72 hours, Danny Ainge came out and said that he's willing to take offers. That is not a coincidence on why he went to dinner or lunch with Emmanuel Quigley or any of the players like Obi Toppin with the Knicks. Now, that again, I'm going to go back to this. The question is, if the Knicks get Donovan Mitchell and they keep RJ and they have obviously Jalen Brunson and maybe they move on with Julius Randle and they have maybe 1 or 2 pieces, are the Knicks the favorite in a top heavy Eastern Conference to come out as a 4 seed? Now, I don't know if they're a 4 seed. They could be a 5th or 6th seed. Mm-hmm. I think they're right there with the middle of the pack teams until we figure out what Donovan Mitchell is going to be in this offense, what Jalen Brunson is going to be in this offense, how good this defense is going to be.
Right.
Because we don't know what's going to happen with this defense. And Tom Thibodeau, we have seen veteran players, and Mitch, even though Donovan Mitchell is a veteran, and you look at him, he's 25 years old, he's still considered a veteran, so is Brunson. You sit here today, are these guys going to fit in the culture that Tom Thibodeau is trying to bring this team to be? And that's Defense first, offense second. Donovan Mitchell is a decent defensive player. He's not a great defensive player. He's a decent defensive player. Jalen Brunson's an okay defensive player. Yeah. These guys are not top-end defensive players. Now, being that Derrick Rose is there, he's coming off the bench, and some of the veteran players that they have there, I heard that they're still thinking about bringing Taj Gibson back when they figure out what they're doing if this Donovan Mitchell trade goes
right, with
and stuff
Robinson,
like that.
Yeah.
They could still bring Taj Gibson back on a very small contract to be one of the leaders of this team to help some of the younger players figure out the defensive style of game that Tom Thibodeau is going to want them to play.
Yeah, it's interesting, though, with Donovan Mitchell, because it's when he came into the league, he actually was thought of as a better defensive player and had to evolve his offense more, and now it's kind of gone the other way. Not that he's a bad defender, he's still a good defender.
He's a good defender. Yeah. He's much better than Jalen Brunson,
yes,
but he's not looked at as a defensive player.
Yeah, he's not thought of as like this juggernaut point guard, defensive point guard that's going to make an all-NBA defensive team, either the first or the second team. But I would say for his position, he's a good defender. So I'm not as worried about him transitioning with Thibodeau. What I'm worried about more is the minutes usage, the way that he wore out a lot of these veteran players.
It's just so interesting to see, with all the different things that have happened so far this offseason with the NBA, and it all stems up to this Kyrie and KD move that could happen in the next couple of weeks. If Donovan Mitchell goes to the New York Knicks, no matter where KD goes, no matter where Kyrie goes, this Donovan Mitchell move will be a move that really sticks out in the offseason. And why? And nobody's talking about Rudy Gobert. Now, is Rudy Gobert the missing piece to this Timberwolves team to take them over the hump, maybe become a championship competitive team? Only time will tell. Rudy Gobert is a defensive-minded team. That was what they lacked in the playoffs last year. That is what they lacked in the second half of the season. They do have Anthony Edwards. They do have Karl Anthony Towns. They have stars on that team. But one player is not going to get them over the hump, as well as the New York Knicks. Donovan Mitchell is not going to take them over the hump. Now, if you guys remember 2 years ago, Julius Randle was becoming a star right in front of our eyes. Now, before the fans started getting into the stadiums and there was no fans, I think Julius Randle played better when there were no fans. When the fans started coming in, his numbers started to dip, and it's been dipping ever since then. Now, could he handle New York? Who knows? Donovan Mitchell, I think, can. He's been there his whole life. His father played there. I think he can handle the New York crowd. He's a New Yorker. He grew up there. He understands what it's like to play in Madison Square Garden. And a matter of fact, if you look at Donovan Mitchell's numbers at Madison Square Garden, they're incredible. They are incredible numbers. He averages almost 25 points a game. He's averaging almost 6 assists a game and about, I think it's 7 or 8 rebounds a game when he plays in Madison Square Garden. Now, the question is, him coming to New York and taking the pressure on as the superstar of this team, not R.J. Barrett. It'll take a little pressure off the kid, take a little pressure off maybe Jalen Brunson. Can he be the leader of this team to take them to that next level? He wasn't there. He wasn't that for Utah. He wasn't. And that's what scares me about this Donovan Mitchell. Finally, the Knicks get a superstar. Is he going to be like Carmelo Anthony, a guy that's going to get his points, get his numbers, but never take this team to that next level? You need a player that's going to get you to that next level.
Carl says if all those moves happened, they still wouldn't be better than the Bulls. Yeah, we're kind of putting them in the same range, 4 through 6, about that, as where the Bulls finished last season. Snug says he's not a defensive liability like Marcus Smart. Everybody is talking about how bad Danny Ainge fleeced the Timberwolves. Yes, but again, that wasn't enough to sway Donovan Mitchell.
Well, you don't know if they fleeced him. The Timberwolves. Here's the thing: if the Timberwolves are a top seed in the Western Conference, those picks are going to be 28, 27, 26. Yeah. He didn't fleece anything. Because if Rudy Gobert gives him that next edge. Now, Rudy Gobert could absolutely hurt the chemistry of that team, and that team could turn out to be the Brooklyn Nets. Right. But Rudy Gobert isn't 33, 34-year-old Kevin Garnett or 35-year-old Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, who's 34, 35, and they're on their way out. Rudy Gobert is 28, 29 years old. Yeah. He's in the prime of his career, and he's an elite defender.
Yeah, I think of him as an essential piece to help out their biggest weakness, which was their inside defense, because Karl Anthony Towns is skill-wise a little more of a 4. He's a good defender, but I wouldn't say he's like top-notch and not a traditional big man type. And it'll allow him to space the floor better, be able to, 1, guard the perimeter, and 2, help out his offensive game. Now, that being said, they still have to improve their own depth too, which now they're going to have to do with their own roster. So from that standpoint, we'll see if those pieces that they traded away hurt them in terms of that, because their depth played well in the playoffs last year against the Grizzlies. outplaying the Grizzlies' depth, which is very good at certain points of that series.